Hello everyone, Dark Committee here from Split Polygon and welcome to the next chapter of this mini series. Now, what we're gonna look at today is Megascans. Well, one of the resources that I use to create environments and get scan assets is Megascans. And right now I am in their proprietary tool called Quixel Bridge, which basically allow you to browse their library and quickly send stuff between applications, between this and your native application. So you're gonna see this is the barrel that I was using so far, and they have a lot more. So let's see, grass clumps. If you click on some of these, you get a 2D or 3D representation. So if you zoom in, you can basically tumble this around and see how it looks like. And you can see it's a PBR workflow. You have the resolution of the textures, lot 0, 1, and 2. This is telling you the level of detail, LOD, of the geometry. So lot 0 is going to be your higher, and like as the lower you go, it's going to be like just a plane, like a card, like a billboard would be just a flat plane. Alrighty, so if you go to 4K, you're going to see, well, this is a tiny view, so you can't really see too much of a difference, but in Maya you will. So when you go to download stuff, you have your, this is a subscription based account, so you log into Quixel. I can't remember exact price, but I think it's like 24 euros a month or something, and you get a certain amount of assets you can download per month, which is quite a bit. And then you have 3D assets, and you have textures, and you have a bunch of free ones as well. So these are, if you click on free, you have 3D assets. You can download all of these for free. So let's download some. Let's grab this guy and go download settings. So lot 0 is the highest poly count one. So it tells you the number of triangles. And also it tells you it has a 4K and 8K map. Let's do a 4K for now. This is the type of render you're going to use. So if you're using Unreal, Unity, V-Ray, for example, it would be the specular one, or Metalness would be Arnold. Now, yeah, so if you do that, then you can pick your OBJ, Alembic, or FBX. Doesn't really matter, they all do this kind of the same job. FBX is the one that I stick with most of the time, and you click download, and you wait. It depends on the size of the asset. It tells you the progress bar over here, which is very handy to kind of know how much time you need to wait. And when it's done, this export setting becomes available. Now here is where you pick the map. So if you download 8K, you're gonna have an 8K version of this. The texture format, you can choose to have JPEG, EXR, PNGs, or whatever. JPEGs is something that I use when I'm doing some quick tests and stuff like that. I go for the TIFFs or the EXRs for final renders because they're much higher quality textures. Or if this asset was far back in the scene and I want to save some memory, I would maybe go for a PNG or a JPEG instead. And I want an FBX to be sent to Maya and a high poly. Now if I click export, nothing is going to happen because I need to click this copy, and it's going to copy this script. So if I go back to Maya, this by default is set to mail. If you click on the mail name, it's going to switch to Python. And you're going to go paste, Control A, Control Enter. And it's going to tell you the bridge has been established. You can send, and you can say thank you. And you can select your asset, and you can click export. And it's going to say exported successfully, and it's going to bring up Maya when it's done. It's a heavy asset, so some of these can take a minute, so don't rush it, don't try to push it because it will crash Maya. Like you can see the barrel, how high poly it is, and voila, this is massive. This is a real world scan. in real world units. So it's gonna be big. Now here's something. If your light is not as big as this, it doesn't matter. All this icon represents is the position of this texture in your world. The size of this has zero impact. Okay, you can just take this, even move it out of the way if you want. It's not gonna change anything. All right, so if I scale this plane up and move it down, I can take this barrel, move it down. Actually, I don't want to be below the grid. I'm gonna take all of these, I'm gonna shift them up like so. Take the barrel, move it up too. And then I would want, actually there's a gap, let's cover that. I would want some sort of texture for my ground. All right, so I'll go back to bridge. Now instead of 3D assets, let's go to surfaces. And this is going to give you textures that are tileable and very, very nice. And they're also scanned. So if you scroll and find something that you find useful, let me see if I already have some purchased or downloaded. Surfaces. I do, but I don't have any. Well, I can use maybe this one. So this is a soil. I grab this guy. I want 4K map, and this is metalness, which is perfect. I can click export. Now this is going to export an empty shader to Maya. It's not going to be connected to anything, but export successfully. All right, go back to Maya. Now there it is. Now it brings in a bunch of extra maps that you may or may not need, so I know I won't. But let's keep them for now. Maybe we can experiment with them. And you have ambient occlusion and a bump map, which I definitely not gonna need. And all of these objects come with displacement turned on and set. Now, for an asset that is this highly detailed in the scan, you don't need a displacement because it's already displaced, right? So if you select this guy, if you go to Arnold, this is the shape node of the object. Go to Arnold tab and you go to subdivision. You see Catmull Clark is turned on. Just switch this to none. You don't need a displacement attribute. This is all fine. That means that if I go to Hypershade, this is the cliff. Remember when I told you this guy is the bridge between this and this? Now this is where you would plug your displacement map. You see 4K displacement. Displacement map is a black and white image, kind of similar to the roughness one, but this one is used to physically move the vertex, like these little triangles, up and down based on the values. So if it's a dark value, it's going to push in. If it's a white value, it's going to push out. This is usually what we use to make a smooth object look rough or displaced. But this one is already displaced in the base geometry, so I'm not going to need this. I'm going to delete this guy. And I'm going to do the same for the ground. Well, no, actually, let's do displace the ground. So let's select this, soil dirt, and assign it. Now I'm going to press 6 on my keyboard, and it's going to activate the textures. And I can see how this is working. Now, if I want this ground to be smaller, what I can do is, this is the very last node of all of these. This is controlling how the texture is being projected on your geometry. So if you're loading a file node and you have a texture, you're gonna need this guy to kind of tell you how this is going to be represented. So this is created automatically when you create a file node. You don't have to do it yourself, but I'm just saying if you click this, you have the repeat. So if I click the repeat and if I say I want you to repeat 3 times on both axes, now that texture is a lot smaller and it's a lot more in line with the barrel. Still rather large, so let's say 5 and 5. But that's more like it. All right. Now let's select this ground and go to subdivision and click Catmull Clark and set the subdivision to, this is a very low poly object. So let's move it up. Actually, I don't need all of these polygons, so I can delete them to save on some polygons. So if I select this and I say sub iterations 4, like the higher poly your base model is, the less time you need to subdivide it. So I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna render just to see what we got. So Arnold, open Arnold render view. Oh, that's already here. Now I want to talk about something while this is loading. So I'm going to click render. I'm going to wait. Now while this is happening, you see this auto convert texture to TX. That's going to bring up this little guy. And what that's doing, it's converting all of these textures that we downloaded into a .tx file, which is a file that Arnold prefers to use for mapping its textures. Oh, I see what's happening. We're having, we have this guy using a wrong shader. So Arnold is going to convert all of your textures to .tx format to be more efficient in memory. All right, so let's figure out what is going on with this plane. So this plane had the shadow matte material. But I think we've already assigned this one. Yes, we did. Now, why are you not rendering it correctly? Let's start render again. Zoom in to see what's going on. Ah, I see what's going on. The displacement is going on. So this thing has two problems. One, if you look from below, the object is displaced crazy much. And two, it looks like a normal issue as well. So let's see. It could be that the displacement is so high that it's breaking the normals, or it could be that the normals are flipped. We'll see. So material attributes. All right, that's connected. Correct. So here's something. When Megascans connect the displacement, it connects it straight into the shading group. It doesn't create the bridge in between. It technically can work, but you see what's happening. So if you go and make a displacement shader, this guy, I don't need this empty shading group. This is what you need to control how the displacement behaves. So if I grab this and connect it to, let me see. So you have out color. If you grab out color red, goes to displacement, and the output of the displacement goes to the displacement shader. Where are you? There you are. Now we're going to start to tweak this to make it look better. First thing we need to do is lower the scale. So let's set to 0.1. As soon as I do that, things are starting to look a little bit more normal. Although the plane is still offset. And our barrel seems to disappear for some reason. I know, probably Arnold is glitching right now and it needs to update the full scene. So I'm going to stop this guy. Focus on the barrel. And go to render, update full scene. All right, I'm going to take the plane and I'm going to go to modify, freeze transformation. I'm going to delete the history as well. Alrighty, and maybe let's give it a bit more subdivision from the start so it doesn't have to subdivide it so much. I think what's going on is because the polygons are so large, it's trying to subdivide this, and you see how big of a bump this makes because the barrel is tiny compared to this and it's getting covered. So I think the displacement is still quite high. So we need to go even lower with the scale. Come on, Arnold, we're waiting for you. Yeah, okay, so sometimes this happens and Arnold would not render. So what you need to do is go to Arnold, flush caches all. So this will flush everything that Arnold stored in the memory. It's kind of like doing an update full scene, but it's also clearing the memory itself. It's not just restarting. It's not just recaching the scene. So I'm gonna go update full scene, and hopefully it's gonna come back to life. Arnold is trying to be smart about caching things, so yeah, now you see it was storing all of this weird information in memory. So now we are, oh, I'm not actually in interactive mode. Now we're starting to make something pretty interesting here. Alrighty. So this soil is looking more like mud, but on the preview in Megascans, it looked dry. Now, why is that and what can we do to fix it? Let's investigate. We have a normal map and a color map, but we don't have a roughness map. Why? Now, it's because it's called glossiness. And this is, when this was captured, it was captured for a specular workflow in mind and not a metallic workflow in mind. So this is glossiness. A glossiness is just an invert of a roughness map. All right. So all you need to do is click tab and type reverse, and it's going to give you a reverse node. So you go out color to input, and as we said before, RGB is not something that roughness likes. So you go output X to specular roughness, and we try again, and now it's going to convert that map, and boom, we have our roughness. Alrighty, much better. Now I think we went a little bit too low on the displacement that now we can't even see almost anything. It's like just a bunch of stuff little here and there. So let's go to our control for the displacement and say maybe give it a 0.2 or 0.3. And now we start to see some of these start to come back. Now if you go to, if you switch shading to basic, we're going to realize that, well, our displacement is not really doing that much. This mode of rendering is showing us what is actually happening with our geometry. All right, so we can judge the displacement interaction by using this. Or actually, if you switch to wireframe, you can see how much actual this geometry Arnold has for the displacement, and you can see compared to these two, that the ground is like almost not displacing at all. So if you select the ground, go to the shape, go to Arnold, be gentle, you don't want to crash it. Now I'm gonna pause it and I'm gonna say maybe try 6 subdivisions instead. And I'll try to recalculate this again. Now we have a little bit more geometry to work, and let's switch to basic again, and you start to see just a tiny bit more details. Let's go to 0.5 with the displacement, or maybe let's bump it up to 1. Okay, there it is, start to come alive. Maybe 1.5. All right, now we're getting somewhere. Now this normal map also gives us a little bit more detail. So here's a very interesting thing. If you select the ground, if you go to the displacement attributes, auto bump, if you click enable auto bump, it's going to take the displacement information and it's going to also put it into the bump channel and combine it with the normal map. So it's going to give you more details than you actually have resolution to display, which is great for us. So let's go back to shading. Now we can start to see, oh, there we go, start to raise some of these objects up a bit. So yeah, you can see it starts to break up and get very nice variety. Now this still looks a little bit too specular for my taste. So what can we do to fix this? Range node. So type AI range, click enter, and now we're going to stack these. So we have the glossiness, we're making it to be a roughness map by using a reverse, and then we're going to use the roughness map to the range, and the range red channel is going to go to the roughness. So now we're starting to stack a bunch of nodes. So now if we take this guy and save, and maybe we can do a region render over here. Now at this point it should look exactly the same. And enable smooth step, and just by enabling smooth step it's going to clamp it down a little bit, and now we can start to play around. This is going to make it more wet, so I want to go the opposite. I'm going to take the maximum and I'm going to drop it. So that's going to make it more rough. Alrighty, this is fun. So I'm going to unpause all of this. Let's start to play around. Let's see our rocks, how they look. Massive. So looking at this, I think we can do with a little bit more tiling. First of all, this stick is gigantic. Well, it doesn't say it can't be, but I just feel it's a little bit too big just by judging the grass clumps and the leaves compared to the barrel. It's a little bit on the large side, right? So let's grab this node, which one is the place to the texture node, and let's increase the tiling to 7 by 7. Let's see how that works now. Add it a little better, a little closer to what we need, and maybe take the displacement and bump it up to 2. Now one thing you need to be careful when using displacement is the actual geometry of this will start to go up and down and up and down based on the map. So if you push the displacement too high, it's going to start to cut through with some objects, especially if you have animals animating on top of this. You want to make sure that this is working correctly. Let's just render that. Okay, now you can see the stick is raising up quite a bit more. It's starting to look a lot more natural. Now this is very cool. Like if you select the environment, and let's say we need to load another image. So let's say this one was a sunset, I think. Yeah, something like a beach. Alrighty, so we have the light coming in from that direction. So let's see. You see the look of this scene changes completely because right now these assets are sitting on a beach. And now this one is not working because it's too wet. So very easy way to fix that. We grab this. Now here's a cool trick that I do. I don't want to mess with this orientation and position of the nodes because I've spent time rearranging them. I can just make a new tab by clicking the plus, and I can graph this, and I can do the same. And I can take this range node and I can be like Control Shift and click and drag, and that's gonna activate this guy. I'm gonna be like, you're too wet. No, I need you to be a little bit more dull looking to kind of blend in with this scene. And I can just disable this if I start to tumble around. So if I grab the sphere of the dome light, I can play around with the lighting, put it in shadow. You can see how this is going to look if there's no sun, only sky, GI bounce. You see that the look of your scene can change dramatically just by changing the rotation of the light. And when you're developing your assets, you want to make sure that you have test renders of the object in shadow, in light, in different kind of lighting scenarios, like different HDRIs. That way you're sure that no matter where you put this guy, you will be able to make it work. Alrighty, so this was for this chapter. It was a little bit longer, but I hope you learned a bunch. We covered a lot of stuff. So if you have any questions, feel free to comment and I'll try to come back to you as soon as I can. All right, guys, we'll continue this journey in the next chapter, so I'll see you there.